Okay, so here I'm looking to make a little video on crimping tools for Deutsch connectors. So attached to this video will be one about Deutsch connector bodies, and kind of a key factor about what you buy is what tools you want to buy or what you're willing to pay for to crimp those. So what we have here is a standard ratcheting crimper. This is currently got a WeatherPack type die in it, or a Deutsch, or excuse me, a Delphi, WeatherPack, Packard, Aptiv, or whatever they're calling themselves this week. Typically, these crimpers have a stamped contact, and you can see the shape of that is kind of like a W shape. And stamped contacts typically are rolled up from sheet metal and they're crimped like this. So the crimper tool is what does this rolling. Here is a Delphi 630, if I can get it in focus, 630 stamped connector. And you can see this first area, this smaller area right here, kind of at the end of my finger, is where the wire goes, and this back area crimps a rubber weather seal that this kind of connector uses. Okay, so that's a stamped connector. This is a solid connector. This is a Deutsch number 12 series connector. Okay, and this is a solid pin type terminal. Okay, so these following two tools crimp solid terminals. This tool is the most universal that I'm showing here. This is an HDT 4800, which is the Deutsch branded, genuine tool. And it has a couple of pieces, but really this is a Daniels Manufacturing AF8. So let's talk about money for a second, because this whole video is kind of centered around cost, or at least my purpose for this video. The Deutsch tool varies widely on the internet. I found it from $328 to $782, depending on where you purchase it from. So I have that written down off camera. I was moving it so that I could read it. There is a copy of this tool made by iWis that's about $111. I've never used the iWis tool. I've used other iWis tools that are ratcheting crimpers like this, and they work fine. Probably in a production environment, if you were doing thousands of crimps, it probably wouldn't hold up, but I don't even know that. Maybe it does hold up. Their tools are generally okay, as far as quality goes. This is a nicer tool, but it's also substantially more expensive. Okay, so the AF8, if you were to buy the Daniels Manufacturing, that's these guys. This is a smaller tool. We'll talk about that in a second. If you were to buy the AF8, it won't have this portion here from the green adjustable part down to this aluminum natural finish part. This is typically called a positioner. And this tool was modified to be specific to the Deutsch terminals. And this will crimp families of terminals from number 12, 12, 16, and 20 with this assembly you see here. If you buy the Daniels tool, the AF8, it will have, instead of this positioner, it will have like a receptacle, a quick change receptacle like this, but larger. And you would need a tool assembly that would go in here, a positioner assembly that has a rotating barrel that it has 3 cavities, and you can pick multiple size crimps. And it will crimp those same 3 solid contact sizes, 12, 16, and 20, that this tool will crimp. But that adjustable positioner is a TH1A, so that costs about $135. So you wouldn't just need the tool body, you would need the tool body plus the positioner. They're 2 separate pieces. If you bought the Daniels tool, this modified HDT 48 that Daniels makes for Deutsch kind of has this universal positioner that fits their products. If you had the legitimate Daniels tool, you wouldn't be limited to crimping just Deutsch terminals. They have hundreds of different tools that fit it, that would fit a myriad of other type of connectors. However, they're not specific to motorsport. Those connectors that they crimp, lots of them are mil-spec type aviation sort of connectors. So they might be connectors you never run across. So keep that in mind. The versatility that an AF8 gives you might not be useful to you at all. So keep that for what it's worth. This smaller tool with the positioner that is like kind of T-shaped, okay, this smaller tool is an AF-M8. I don't know if it stands for mini or micro, but the idea for this tool is it's the same as this, only it crimps smaller terminals. So this particular tool costs about $400, and then the positioners are somewhere between $60 to $80. So it varies. And there are other people who make these positioners. This one happens to be a Daniels one, and you can see on the end there's actually a chart. If you can see that, and the chart tells you what crimp sizes it will crimp, what terminal numbers, and then what adjustments you must set this for. This is adjustable to control the crimping tension. So since these are less common, if I were to get a close-up of this tool and we were to look down inside it, the way that it crimps is it has fingers that extend into the middle, and it puts indentations, 8 indentations inside the solid crimp body. So it crimps in this area here. That small hole right there that just appeared, that's the wire insertion assurance hole. So like when you put your stripped wire in, you should see the end of the wire in there. Then you load this contact into this tool, right, into here, into that hole there, and then you crimp it. And it makes 8 indentations with those compression fingers, and that's how the crimp is made. This tool does the exact same thing, it's just smaller. And the reason I'm refilming this video is I mistakenly stated that this tool could do 16 and 20 Deutsch contacts. It really can't. This tool is limited to about 20 gauge wire, which would kind of limit you to number 20 contacts. There are other people who make copies of this tool that say that you can use Deutsch number 16 contacts with it. 16, not gauge 16, but 16 size. And while that may indeed be true, this tool actually isn't capable of that. So the positioner that's available for this tool for Deutsch is only for number 20 contacts. So it might benefit you if you want a tool that's smaller, right? I mean, you can use my hand for reference. I wear extra large gloves if that means anything to you. So this tool is smaller, easier to operate. And if it can crimp the terminals you like, and if you buy one of the various copies of this tool that would accept both 16 and 20, and that's all you're doing, maybe this would be faster and easier to use because it's much smaller than this tool, obviously. When you release this all the way, I can't even grab the whole thing. You'd have to kind of start it and do this number and then squeeze it. So this tool might be a little less convenient, the AF8, but or the HDT4800, which is what this is, but it would crimp a wider range. So if you're only going to buy one tool, this guy's probably your best bet. And if you get it with this generic positioner, either the Deutsch tool or the IWIS tool, this might be your cheapest option because it's adjustable and it doesn't require interchangeable tool turrets. And you could also crimp stamp terminals, so that's an option. These jaws that I have in here are not for Deutsch, but they look very similar. And you can put stamped terminals and solid terminals into all of the Deutsch connector bodies that accept them. So there's not solid terminal specific Deutsch connectors, and there's not stamped terminal specific connectors. Both stamped and solids will fit in there. And in fact, in this size, in size 12, there are some unique stamped ones that take larger wire sizes, like 10 gauge, where this barrel only goes to 12 gauge. So they're, just because it's thinner, right, and there's more space. So if you really need to put a 10 gauge wire into a number 12 pin location, a crimp tool could do it where a solid tool technically could not, unless there's some special Deutsch terminals that I'm not aware of that do that. There are some unique Deutsch terminals where they typically have colored painted bands in this area here, like on the crimp end. In fact, off camera here, I'm going to try to grab one so I can show you. I have some other terminals over here that I could pull from. Sorry, I'm pouring out a bag over here. And a lot of times they denote special connectors with paint, right? So this is a green terminal. And what's unique, hold on. What's unique about these is this is a number 16 contact, this green one that will accept a 14 gauge wire, which is right at the end of the range for this particular contact. So it's different than the standard contact. The standard contact for number 16 only goes 16 to 20. So if you needed a 14, there's a specific terminal for that. There's actually even a much smaller terminal that goes into the range of the 20, Deutsch 20 contact size. And I believe it goes down to 24 gauge in a 16, but it's a special order item and I never see it in stock anywhere. Sure, it's somewhere though, and I'm sure somebody has crimped those before. I believe they're purple. But you kind of get my drift. There are some special items that are not commonly available to everyone, and that may violate some of the basic rules. But so the key things to keep in mind are kind of figure out what you're trying to do. Do you need to use solid contacts, or do you want to use solid contacts? And or are you going to use a formed stamped contact? These are cheaper. These cost more. I mean, there's no difference there. Sometimes the wire gauges are only acceptable to the crimped, or excuse me, to the solid contacts, and sometimes there are others that fit stamped contacts. Now, I would say if you're going to buy this tool and crimp Deutsch connectors everywhere on your vehicle, this tool is the most universal, and you could use solids for just about everything. The solids generally have ranges that the crimped terminals, the stamped terminals, do not. I'm sorry, I said crimped. The stamped terminals generally don't give you any extra range. The only one I can think of is the number 12 that accepts a 10 gauge is stamped only, but I'm not aware of any others. People that maybe do this professionally are aware of some overlaps that don't exist. And the way you'd figure this out, the best way to figure this out, as far as what terminal fits what wires, is download the instruction manual for the HDT 4800, the Deutsch original tool, and it has within the manual a chart that basically shows every connector that would fit this and what the dial settings would be, and what wire gauges it would be acceptable to use on. I will warn you now, it's a big data sheet, and there are some items that are discontinued in there. I think it was last updated around the year 2000, and they've consolidated some of their part numbers. But current part numbers on the TE Connectivity website, if you were to put those in, it'll lead you to the product that's available for sale today. So the thing to keep in mind there is that TE's website's pretty good. So TE Connectivity is who owns Deutsch, and they own like everybody. You can download drawings, documents. You don't need any special login. You don't need a business. You know, you can just go on there and type in the part number, and it'll give you all the information and the mating components and the compatible parts. And it's really a pretty good website. And they have a live chat. You can ask people questions there. I've used that for a couple of very specific Bosch items, and they've been helpful. But most of what you need is right on the website without any real serious digging. Type in the part number, and it brings up all the information related to it. So hopefully that answers some questions. If you're going to consider using the Deutsch product line in your Cobra build, I think they're great connectors. They have a good range, and following this, after we talked about tools, I have some connectors laid out to talk about. So thanks.